Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the MIT Sloan Fellows MBA Curriculum Overview webinar. My name is, let's see here. There we go. My name is Katy Radoll, and I am a member of the admissions team here at MIT Sloan, and very excited to be spending the morning or the evening or the afternoon with you, depending on where you are in the world, to talk about the Sloan Fellows MBA curriculum experience. Just a quick agenda so that you know what we're going to cover today. I am going to give a quick background on the MIT Sloan and the MIT Sloan Fellows MBA, but really today we're here to talk about the learning philosophy of MIT Sloan and the Sloan Fellows MBA, and then I'm going to dive deeper and deeper into the curriculum. How does this really work? What's it like to be a student in the Sloan Fellows MBA program? And then many of you have submitted questions prior to this, so hopefully I've answer those along the way, but we'll leave some time towards the end for you to use the chat function to ask any questions that you have, and I promise we'll get to those towards the end. What we're not going to focus on today is the application components of the program, how we evaluate our participants. You'll see towards the end of our time on a later slide that we do have an upcoming application tips webinar towards the end of September. So I definitely encourage you to join that. But today we're going to focus primarily on the learning philosophy and the academic experience for the Sloan Fellows. So just quickly, at MIT Sloan, our master's degree programs are represented in a portfolio of degree programs. You can see here I've highlighted the Sloan Fellows MBA program. This is one of our two executive degrees that lead to an MBA, or in the case of the Sloan Fellows, a Master's of Science in Management. All the way to the other end of the spectrum is our early career master's degree programs. And then right there in the middle is our more traditional two-year MBA program. So just starting at the very, very top for us, because everything always comes back to the mission of MIT Sloan, which is to develop principled, innovative leaders who improve the world. And hopefully, as you're learning more and more about the Sloan Fellows program and learning more and more about MIT Sloan, as you join webinars or meet us on the road or interact with our alumni or our current students, this is constantly bubbling to the surface. It's something that you'll see in the syllabi that our faculty have. It's something that I hear in conversation all the time throughout the halls of our campus. It is a very mission-driven school, and at the center of that is constantly connecting the learning in the room, in the classroom, and the research being done here to the impact we're having on the world beyond Sloan. So what is an ideal Sloan Fellow candidate? So 10 or more years of post-bachelor's full-time work experience, and that includes having leadership and management experience. This is a differentiator between our Sloan Fellows and our two-year MBA students, that they're coming in with experiencing managing people, managing process, sometimes from the general management exposure or level, but oftentimes from the strategy level. So this is very important to our community of Sloan Fellows that you have that leadership and management experience. On occasion, we do have students that join the program with, I'm going to say 9 years of experience. Those candidates are often excelling in their careers faster than their peers. And if I were to look on an organizational chart or around at the peer group they work with on a daily basis, those would have 15, 20 years of work experience. It's important to us that you're committed to that global perspective, not just from a country or country border perspective, but also across your industry and your organization. How are those boundaries that you're pushing? How are those decisions that you are making for your team challenging teams across your organization? And that for us is also having a more global perspective on the business. It is MIT. We do want to make sure that you're going to be quantitatively comfortable. It doesn't mean that you need to come in with a background as a super quantitative or a math undergrad, but I do need to make sure that you're going to be comfortable with the rigor of the curriculum, which you'll see unfold in the upcoming slides, and that you're communicating, have a strong English communication style. All of our curriculum here and all of our academic experiences are delivered in English. And that you're really committed to a whole year of, separating yourself from your career and really looking in the mirror every day at what kind of leader are you becoming and what are those blind spots that you want to continue to unfold and those strengths that you want to strengthen. There is a lot built into the curriculum around leadership that will really challenge the way that you perceive yourself and the way that others perceive you, which is important in the world today. So just quickly, our current class, which just started their autumn or their fall semester yesterday, it's 104 global executives coming from 40 different countries if we were to count their first citizenships. I think that's a really powerful number when you think about the profile of a Sloan Fellow. And then you can see here, I've also circled that their average years of work experience is 14. This is quite different from our 2-year MBA, where 80% of the class is somewhere between, I'm going to say, like 4 and 6 years of experience. So much more experience, much more senior group of students in our Sloan Fellows class. The MIT Sloan Fellows program, our students primarily do earn an MBA. Every year, 3 or 4 will ultimately pursue the Masters of Science in Management or Management Technology. That does require a thesis, which I'll touch on a little bit later. But majority of our students do ultimately pursue the MBA credential. Like I mentioned before, it is a rigorous data-driven curriculum. It is our goal to be providing you with those tools and frameworks to make data-driven decisions in your organization and in your industry. It is a very flexible curriculum, which you'll see later. MIT Sloan is very famous for its 1 semester core. Core means the required coursework that you're going to take. Our goal at MIT is to give you as much flexibility to carve out how you want to spend your academic experiences. You are a full-time graduate student at MIT who is in a degree program at the Sloan School of Management. So you have the same access across the institute that any other graduate student does as well. I mentioned this earlier, it's an incredible opportunity to unplug from your day-to-day life, to take a step aside and really immerse yourself in an academic environment. MIT is a really unique place to learn and to be, exploring opportunities and different areas of interest that maybe you weren't aware of before coming here. And then the fellows community. I mentioned earlier, there's 104 in our current class of 2020. Those are your peer group. And while today we're going to talk a lot about the academic experience, it is such an amazing group of individuals, families, and significant others that make up that Sloan Fellows community. Actually, on Saturday, I'm going to go to their Welcome Back barbecue at the Museum of Science. So I'll get to meet more families and significant others and partners of our current class, which I'm really excited to be a part of. So let's take a closer look at the Sloan Fellows academics experience. This education philosophy at MIT Sloan, again, is to focus on making data-driven decisions. We use the words around here, the science of management. It goes hand in hand that MIT, a very engineering and science-driven school, would have a management program or management school that is focused on the scientific approach to management. Even in a leadership course, the data drives those decision-making, those decisions that you make and how to manage your team or how to move forward. I mentioned we haven't talked a lot about innovation and entrepreneurship. It really is in the water here. Even if you know that your next step out of Sloan is to not be an entrepreneur right away, we're hoping that when you go back into your organizations, that you're thinking more innovatively and more entrepreneurially or entrepreneurially in how to uncover new ideas or drive change within your organization. If you are constantly excited about addressing those problems in your organization or your industry that seem messy or unstructured, this is probably a great place for you. But being, again, really conscious and in thinking systematically about how we drive that change is how we're, the kind of content that we're delivering in the classroom. And then we use a pedagogy here at MIT Sloan called action learning, which boils down to learning by doing. This is probably going to represent about a third of how you receive content in the classroom through action learning, whether that's the faculty bringing in a guest speaker from outside of the institute at just the right time to walk through their leadership experiences and using a particular framework or theory, or how they were met with challenges around rolling out change in their industry. It also means potentially partnering with a real organization and working on a real problem that they've presented to MIT Sloan that they would like a fresh set of eyes on, whether that's a leadership challenge, a sustainability challenge, or even an entrepreneurial challenge of how to grow beyond someone's borders. There's lots of opportunity to get your hands dirty here at MIT Sloan and constantly be connecting the theory that you're learning in the classroom with the practice of that theory outside of Sloan. In the Sloan Fellows program specifically, the curriculum is really built around 3 pillars. The first is the leadership pillar, and we've touched on this a little bit, but it is a huge piece of the puzzle while you're a Sloan Fellow. Over 12 months, we are putting you constantly in situations where you are strengthening those strengths, and I mentioned identifying those blind spots. Will those blind spots hold you back in your future endeavors, or are they just good to be aware of? The innovation piece, again, at MIT Sloan, this is really unavoidable. It's constantly part of the discussion. How are we challenging those status quos and helping the people around us see things differently and to lead through change from a more innovative perspective? And then that global perspective, it's really about broadening how you view your business, how you view your industry and your organizations. Sometimes that means, how you're working across borders or across continents with your other teammates. Other times it means, how is the work that you're doing impacting those that sit just across the table from you in a leadership setting? We have incredible faculty here at Sloan. I'm only going to highlight 3 of them for you today. In the Sloan Fellows program, you are taught by the same faculty that teach in all of our graduate degree programs here at MIT Sloan. The first photo is our faculty director for the Sloan Fellows MBA program, Simon Johnson. I wasn't able to include all his accolades on the screen. He has a new book out, which is very popular in looking at the sort of remanufacturing of America. He's also the former chief economist of the IMF. And he is very, very engaged in the Sloan Fellows MBA program, whether he's teaching a core course or joining all of the class forums or town halls where students are able to discuss upcoming activities or share feedback on how the experience has been for them so far. Erin Kelly is been teaching in the program now for a number of years and doing some incredible work around sort of in the organizational processes field and how these dots really connect. How do the people that you're working with really, how do you influence them to move this idea forward that you may have to implement into your organization? And then John Sturman is back from sabbatical this year and is a faculty of system dynamics and is very, very passionate in leading our sustainability initiative here at MIT Sloan. And you'll have a lot of fun with all of these faculty and many, many more in the classroom. So the components of the program are really broken into 2. So there's a couple of words you're going to hear me use a lot today that I wanted to make sure that we defined up front. I think first and foremost, the word core. Those are all of your required courses. This will be how you spend your summer, which I'll lay out in a moment, and then elective courses. This is how you customize your academic experience. I mentioned thesis earlier on. Oftentimes our Sloan Fellows are very excited to come and engage in research with our faculty, to connect the faculty with organizations outside of MIT Sloan. It is a research institute first and foremost, and so that constant connection or dotted line between theory and practice, or academics and professional, is invaluable to our faculty, and our students often play a role in that. It is a very student-driven institute or school of management. There's student-led treks and study modules that our Sloan Fellows have just within their class, but also within the Sloan School. I mentioned action learning a little bit earlier. This is also sometimes thought of as experiential learning. This is a pedagogy that was pioneered here at MIT Sloan. It really links back to the motto of MIT, which is mens et manus, or mind in hand. This is usually where I get a lot of questions around, why does MIT have a management school? And the truth is that it's really important that we're developing so much incredible science and technology and management practices, but if they're not being put into use in the real world, then we're not having that impact to improve the world that our mission statement says. And so action learning allows our students to engage with the practice of that in a safer environment, to understand how things work, test things out more than once, so that when you do graduate and you do return to an organization, you are ready to hit the ground running and use a lot of this new knowledge that you've gained over 12 months. And then some of that action learning comes through special sessions, speakers that are specific to the Sloan Fellows, but also around MIT Sloan and MIT as an institute. I've touched on this a little bit already. There is a huge personal and professional development piece of this experience over 12 months. It's very important that as you're deciding whether or not MIT Sloan is the right school for you, and that the Sloan Fellows is the right program for you, and that this experience is right for your partner or your family to be a part of, that you're also preparing yourself to have a transformative experience. I know that sounds like a fluffy word, but our alumni use that term constantly, that they didn't come prepared for how transformational the whole experience over 12 months really is. Some of that is very structured. All of our Sloan Fellows enter the program having completed a 360 leadership assessment, and that data is then shared with the student and an executive coach. And over the summer, you and your executive coach will have one-on-one sessions. Those coaches will also have one-on-one sessions with your study teams or your learning teams throughout the summer. There is a lot of support and growing support for students on an individual as well as a group basis for career development, whether that's through research, networking, or just one-on-one preparedness for what comes next. And that is built into the curriculum experience, which is why it's important to highlight here this morning. So how does this work? How do we pack all this into 12 months? I'm going to lay out everything over the course of how a semester works for us. I mentioned, I haven't mentioned this, but we do have an orientation for our students in April. It is not required, but highly recommended that you join the orientation in April should you be accepted and admitted into a future class. This is a great opportunity to overlap with the graduating Sloan Fellows because it is only a 12-month program. You don't have a lot of opportunity to engage with the current class before you become a current student. If you're a non-US citizen or coming from outside of even the Boston area, but even mostly the US, it's a great time to come, familiarize yourself with the neighborhoods, maybe set up a bank account, do some of that legwork before you arrive in June for the start of your summer term. The summer term is 100% core classes. You will be in class Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, almost all day. Tuesdays and Thursdays you're not off the hook, but they will be used for coaching, for teamwork, for special speaker sessions. Lots of other things will happen on Tuesdays and Thursdays. One of the questions that we got before we started our webinar this morning was, what are some of the biggest changes that are either on the horizon or that have happened most recently to the curriculum? The summer term is one of those biggest changes. So if you were to meet an alumni from a few years ago, they would have told you the summer was Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. And while it's still an incredibly intense summer and the goal is to have you take as much of the core or the required coursework over the term of the summer, we have, through a lot of feedback from past students and a lot of work with the faculty and the program director, that they have been able to realign the summer to be to allow for that soak time, to allow for Tuesdays and Thursdays to be used for those outside core sessions. So the summer is still very intense. And one of the reasons that it's so intense is that when you come back in September, after a short break in the month of August, we want you to be able to spend as much of your time taking elective courses. This goes back to the idea that it is a very flexible curriculum, that you should be able to identify how you want to spend your time here. You should be able to pick and choose which courses are the most meaningful for you in order to be prepared for what's next for you. There will be access to action learning courses during that semester, courses across MIT Sloan. There is also a optional Lens on Leadership module. If you think back to our 3 pillars, this is our leadership module that happens in New York City, and about 90% of the class will participate in that. It's usually 3 or 4 days where you have pretty incredible access to senior leaders, really closed doors conversations where they're going to walk through their leadership journey with you and highlight, their stumbles, their triumphs, and maybe what they would have done differently had they been on the other side of that decision-making process again. But the fall semester, you'll have a couple of core classes with your Sloan Fellow classmates, but really you're starting to integrate at that point into the greater MIT and MIT Sloan community. January here at MIT is a pretty long term for us, where you're really free to spend it how you want to. This is specific. What I'm going to say next is very specific to the Sloan Fellows. You don't have any required courses during the independent activities or January term. Some of our students around here do, but our Sloan Fellows have no required courses or content that they have to engage in over the January term. A lot of students like to stay around campus and participate in the executive electives, which are hosted by the Executive MBA program, the sister program to the Sloan Fellows MBA. It's an incredible networking opportunity with the current EMBAs as well as alumni from both executive degree programs. There is a negotiation seminar typically for the Sloan Fellows with Professor Jared Curran every winter. That's an amazing course. You'll really experience that action learning pedagogy in that course. Some students do travel. They may return home during January, or they'll participate in an action learning course where maybe they're partnered with an organization or an entrepreneur in another part of the world. That's that international experience. The thesis research, if you do pursue the Master's of Science, this is where you would spend a lot of your time starting to map out that thesis structure. You're going to be diving pretty deep at that point into your research, and you're going to start preparing to spend a lot of your spring semester writing. Again, the spring looks pretty similar to our fall term. You'll have somewhere between, I would say, 1 and 2 spring term core classes or required classes. And then again, majority of your time is going to be spent in electives, creating that roadmap for yourself on how you want to learn in that final semester here. There is a global perspectives module that happens in the spring, usually in March, in Washington, D.C. If you remember earlier when I showed the photo of Professor Simon Johnson, He is incredibly well-connected and generous with those connections in terms of creating opportunities for the Sloan Fellows to meet with global leaders from the policy perspective during that module to DC in the spring. And then I don't have it on here, but you graduate in May. And that is, it's a very quick 12 months. So take it from a different perspective. I've talked a lot about the core. What does that mean? It's about 12 courses, 11 or 12 courses that the faculty committee and the school have prescribed as foundational courses. These are very, very, very similar to what our two-year MBAs take as well. I like to think of them as falling into two buckets. The first is your business essentials. These are the courses that often represent the leadership team or the C-suite around your organization, right? The vice president of, or the COO. So you have your operations courses, your marketing courses, finance, and then you have all your analytical tools and frameworks courses. These are those science of management courses that I mentioned much earlier on. These are the courses that are going to give you the tools and frameworks to drive data-driven decision-making in your business essentials. So system dynamics, data models and decisions, which is the first course at MIT Sloan in analytics, or in using data-driven, those analytical data-driven tools. You do have a few more foundational courses in the Sloan Fellows than our two-year MBAs do. That's because we feel really strongly here at Sloan that there are some courses that are typically elective, like macroeconomics, global leadership, as well as system dynamics, that should be required for a senior executive to have that mindset or that perspective on the world or on the people around them. And so those become required courses in the Sloan Fellows program. Electives, there are hundreds of electives to choose from. You have full access across MIT Sloan. You are allowed to register to take electives across MIT as well as at Harvard's professional schools. We call this cross-registration. In the Sloan Fellows program, it's a percentage of your units that you're allowed to do. Usually that ends up being 3 to 4 courses over the fall and spring semester that you can cross-register at MIT or Harvard, and vice versa. Those students come into MIT and MIT Sloan, which creates a really diverse group of learners in all of our elective classrooms. I've listed the thesis here. Again, if you pursue the Masters of Science versus the MBA, you will complete all of the summer MBA and fall and spring core MBA classes, and then you would use a majority of your electives to pursue the thesis. If you're interested in research, but not interested in the thesis and the MS degree, there is ample opportunity to engage in independent study or research, and you would use your elective credits for those as that works for you. This is probably a lot to take in, and I can imagine that it's very overwhelming for our students to choose from hundreds of electives. You're not alone in how you make these decisions. There's an incredible support network of academic advisors, career development advisors, faculty, alumni, current students that will all give you feedback, solicited and unsolicited, on which courses you should take and what kind of roadmap you should build for yourself. But I think what's important is that you are not siloed for 12 months into the Sloan Fellows program. When we come to our second and our fall semester, you are integrated into the greater Sloan community and often taking electives with our two-year MBAs, sometimes an undergrad that has a Sloan major, our Masters of Business Analytics students. It's a very, very diverse group of students. But what that allows you to do is choose from hundreds of electives every semester. So if that is still daunting, there are a couple of ways that you can add more structure to how you choose your electives. I just learned a few days ago that the tracks that have always been only available to our 2-year MBAs because of the number of courses that were required to complete for that track are now being rolled out as a pilot to this year's class of 2020 in an executive format. So in a moment, I'll remove the breaking news, but that comes in the form of finance, enterprise management, entrepreneurship, and innovation. Like I said, these are really just guiding posts for if you want to pivot into finance, or if you want to deep dive into finance or entrepreneurship and innovation. That these will provide you with lists of courses that you can either choose to pursue and specialize in, or they're just a great roadmap to help you understand how you can deep dive into those particular subjects. It is a pilot, so we will see how this year goes. The entrepreneurship and innovation track is something that last year's class was able to really move the needle on, and a handful of students were able to graduate with the entrepreneurship and innovation executive track for Sloan Fellows. Just another great example of how student-driven and how open to feedback our community is here at MIT Sloan. You know, we want you to have the skill, the comfort in tackling the status quo and pushing and challenging change within your organization. And so we need to practice what we preach here, and the entrepreneurship and innovation track that was a big breakthrough last year for our Sloan Fellows. The certificates will add a little bit of structure, but still allow you to take other electives outside of the certificate. So if you think of a track, it's the most structured. It is almost like having a minor in your degree, in your MBA degree. The certificates, which are healthcare, sustainability, and data analytics, these are very achievable in 2 semesters, though they will add more structure to your academic experience than a classmate who is really cherry picking and being a little less deliberate about which courses they want to take over the course of their 2 semesters here on campus. If you're curious about the requirements or the goals and initiative around these initiatives, all of these tracks and certificates have their own web pages here at MIT Sloan. A quick Google search of the MIT Sloan Healthcare Certificate will show you the leadership from the faculty perspective and the courses they require for that. So if you're interested, you can definitely dig a little bit deeper on the MIT Sloan website. And then again, I've listed here the modules in New York and DC, which are specific to the Sloan Fellow MBA students. We're not going to talk a lot about extracurriculars today, but I like to say that about 50% of your experience here at MIT Sloan happens outside the classroom. How are you growing those leadership skills, through club initiatives, through different student conferences? I've only listed just, the really scratch the surface here. There's about 100 clubs that are active every year at MIT Sloan. There's many, many more student-run conferences. The sports analytics, probably the most famous at MIT Sloan right now. It is the largest student-run conference in North America, and has a lot of eyes on it from both inside and outside the institute, but is still very much student-managed and student-run with faculty oversight. There's many, many centers for excellence around MIT. The Martin Trust Center for Entrepreneurship at MIT happens to sit on Sloan's campus, so very, very accessible to walk in, spend time there at any point of the day, just to understand the different initiatives they have going on within the Entrepreneurship Center. And then there's in the ecosystem of entrepreneurship and innovation really expands beyond Sloan and MIT to Kendall Square, which is the neighborhood that MIT Sloan is located in here in Cambridge. Even tomorrow, I'm going to be going to watch the final presentations for Delta V, which is a simulator that our students will choose to spend their summer participating in, to spend 3 full months really trying to get a startup off the ground or get their idea off the ground with their classmates. So I'm excited to see how the Delta V presentations unfold tomorrow. I mentioned there's hundreds of electives. This is a really small sampling of all the different electives that have been really popular over the last couple of years for our Sloan Fellows. I've bolded one called Choice Points, and reference that this is something that is open to our students' significant others. I know this was a question that was asked a few times leading into our webinar today. The academic experiences here at Sloan are really only for degree students, so a student enrolled in a degree granting program. But Choice Points has been a part of the Sloan Fellow experience for many, many years. Choice Points is a leadership course through literature. And if you think about Choice Points as the crossroads, right? At the point you have to make a choice to go left or right or north or south, what lessons through literature can our students use to carve out that decision that they're making? It's very, very popular with our Sloan Fellow students, and very, very popular with our significant others, which we affectionately around Sloan call SOs. There are a lot of other opportunities for our significant others around campus through clubs. They actually have their own club, the Significant Others of Sloan, or SOS, that's very, very, very active. And in this year's class, the significant others, the partners, husbands, wives, girlfriends, boyfriends, have carved out, through the help of the program office, a guest speaker series. They are usually engaging in other guest speakers sessions outside of the classroom. So while we ask that they're not joining academic class sessions, there is a lot of other opportunity for them to engage in conferences and club activity to help, make sure that they're integrating into our community as much as possible. So I am going to stop talking for a minute and take some questions. One question that I know was asked in the that was pre-submitted that I didn't get a chance to reference yet is, how many courses do we actually take? So of the required core classes, you will take, I believe it's 7 of 11 or 7 of 12 in the summer. And again, I mentioned that's because you want to be able to free up the fall and spring term for as many electives as possible. It really depends in the fall and the spring how many electives you take, what the balance of your curriculum is. At the very, very least, I was just down with one of the advisors 2 days ago doing some math. At the very, very least, it's about 50-50. 50% of your academic experience is required core curriculum, and 50% can be elective. That's if you take the bare minimum of electives that MIT requires you to graduate with a graduate degree. If you were to take the maximum number of units, or that's what MIT refers to as course hours or course credits, it would be about 40% core and upwards of 60% elective. MIT breaks their semesters into 2 halves. So some courses will be a half semester or 8 weeks. Some courses will be a full semester and 16 weeks. And so it's hard to say exactly how many courses you can take from September to December. If all of your courses were 16 weeks, I would imagine you're probably taking 4 elective courses on average. Anywhere north of that is going to be a lot to manage, and you may not have as much time to engage in the extracurriculars. If you take more half semester courses, you could probably take 3 to 4 courses the first half of a semester and another 3 to 4 courses in the second half of the semester. But it really just depends on what your individual interests are and how you want to spend that time. Another question that came in from a few folks is the difference between the MBA and the Sloan Fellows program from an academic perspective. I mentioned earlier that the core is very similar. It's still rooted in the general management practice of driving decision-making through data. What I think is a differentiator for the Sloan Fellows is, aside from you being here for 12 months instead of 2 full years, is that the Sloan Fellows won't participate in a summer internship. It's usually not something that Sloan Fellows need in their career paths. Those are fairly junior roles, which makes sense for a 2-year MBA, but perhaps not someone with 14 or 15 years of work experience. I think that's the other thing, is the conversation in the classroom is, while you're learning the same content in, say, finance, marketing, operations, economics, the faculty have spent a lot of time thinking about how they deliver that and what kind of conversation they're facilitating in the classroom for managers. You are less likely to be in the weeds. As a manager, maybe I heard a student say, I don't need to know how to break apart a bond, but I need to know how my team does that so that I can ask the right questions, that I know when to push back, and I have the right language and tools to manage those teams, even if that's not my area of expertise. And that's for me, a difference of how our students are learning in the classroom from a core perspective. From an elective perspective, this is new content for everybody. And so that changes a bit for you when you're in those elective courses. And I'm gonna go to the questions. Let's see. So I have a question here. Is it possible to attain the MBA and the Masters of Technology, or the MOT? Unfortunately, no. You would pursue one degree, and you would either pursue the MBA or the Masters of Technology with the thesis required. What I would say is some students more students come in intending to pursue the master's thesis, and then ultimately the Masters of Management or Masters of Technology. And then they get here and they suddenly have their eyes open to everything going on around them, and they pivot and they go a different direction than they anticipated. And that's really, really common at MIT Sloan, not just for our Sloan Fellows, but for all of our degree students. We want you to have that flexibility to look around you and to learn, and not feel like you're required to pursue that Masters of Technology or the thesis because that's what you said you were going to do in July. There's a certain point where you either have to elect into it or not. But if you elect into it and in December decide, actually, this isn't what I want, you can go and just pursue the MBA, which is where we ultimately only have a handful that earn the master's thesis or complete the master's thesis. Let's see here. There's a lot of questions here about that relate to the application components and how we evaluate candidates. What I mentioned earlier that there's going to be a specific webinar coming up in a few weeks about our application process. So I'm gonna ask you to redirect those questions there, or send us an email. We're not gonna spend any time this morning talking about the application process. There's a great question here. Can the electives at Harvard be counted towards the graduate degree there? Unfortunately, no, unless they are, while we have an open door policy for students to take elective courses across both of our institutes, you are an MIT graduate student cross-registering into their course, not into one of their degree programs. And so just like if you were a degree student at Harvard, graduated and had taken some courses at Sloan and then wanted to come to Sloan for a different degree, you wouldn't be able to transfer those credits back and forth. Another question that we got early on was if the curriculum in the Sloan Fellows was STEM certified, and none of our MBA programs, including the Sloan Fellows MBA, is STEM certified. You can attend courses in our STEM schools. So a lot of Sloan students, even Sloan Fellows, like to participate in the entry-level computer science course with the undergraduate students. I hear it's the hardest course anyone takes while they're here at Sloan, but invaluable to have that language and be able to go back into the workplace, especially as data analytics and data science is really driving the conversation around challenges in industry. So you do have access to some of those courses. You would need to meet some prerequisites in our engineering school. Just keep in mind, if you're looking to take a graduate level engineering elective, you would need to have an undergraduate engineering baseline in order to participate in those courses. But the computer science entry-level course that our Sloan students take, there's no prerequisite for that. So I would highly recommend that. Yeah, so I know I ran through the tracks and certificates. So it is a lot of options. So I'm gonna focus on the certificates because those have always been something that was available to our Sloan Fellow students. This puts a little bit of structure around how you choose those elective courses. I like to tell students that they think of them as like a treasure map or a roadmap for someone who wants to deep dive into healthcare and doesn't have a healthcare background, or someone who wants to pivot into analytics. I think for a Sloan Fellow, that often means you want to be a part of carving out a data science division at your organization, or you want to manage teams of data scientists or business analytics or data analytics teams within your organization. As a Sloan Fellow, I don't expect that you're going to go back and be the data scientist. I think that's probably much more junior role than you're looking to be, but you are likely going to have folks on your team that come in with that expertise. And so this will, if you pursue the certificate, there would be a number of boxes that you would have to check. So I like to describe this as having almost like 3 columns, and in every column you may have 5 or 6 electives that have been mapped out by the faculty who oversee that certificate. In column A, you have to check, say, 3 of the 6 boxes. In column B, you have to check 2 of the 4 boxes. And in column C, you have to check 2 of the 5 boxes. They're all a little bit different. They have varying levels of flexibility, and they are all non-binding. So again, if you come in and you start pursuing the healthcare certificate and you suddenly get really, really interested in data analytics or something, or a startup that you find yourself engaging in, you are not bound to that certificate or that path. There is still a lot of flexibility at Sloan to drop add, to pivot. The thing to keep in mind is that you only have 2 semesters here. So leaning on your program advisor that's assigned to you, leaning on your career development advisor to have really candid conversations about what's next for you in your career path and which courses are going to best prepare you for that next pivot or advancement in your career. Some of our students are taking a step up the ladder and they're staying in the same funnel, and other students are pivoting and maybe expanding that general management exposure. And that is why every student here has a really unique experience. So we have a great question about whether we see more fellows pivoting into new areas or continuing to build on existing strengths. I hate to use the consulting answer, it depends. I know that through the coaching model and the 360 leadership assessment that's been created here at MIT through the Leadership Center, there is a huge emphasis on continuing to strengthen your strengths, right? That's what got you here. That's what made you successful already. And so there is an emphasis on continuing to build your strengths. But there is a lot going on around here, and it is not unusual that, in those first couple of weeks of school, you are sitting next to someone that has a job that you didn't even know was a job, or in an industry or a function that you're suddenly very curious to learn more about. And we want you to have we want you to have your blinders off to explore those other opportunities, but keeping in mind that you should always have your strengths at the forefront, because that's really what's going to get you to that next level, or to that even in that pivot. If you were to pivot industries, some of those functional strengths are what's going to help you pivot out of something into something new. We are working on developing a webinar with some recent alumni on folks that have pivoted, whether it's pivoting within their function or pivoting within their industry, out of their industry. So more on that to come. We're really excited. We're working with Career Development Office on sharing those stories with the community out there. So I've mentioned a few different activities we have coming up. There's a lot of information here. I highly recommend, if you haven't already, really dig into our website. There's a lot of really great information on there. The student leadership blog, which is the second link here, is going to get back up and running with our current students. I just saw a call for voices to be a part of that leadership blog. We have a lot of events still coming up around the world, as well as on campus and virtual. And most importantly, September 19th at 10 a.m. There's a lot of great questions that came in today about how we evaluate and the application components that we require. Our Assistant Dean, Donna Levinson, is going to lead that conversation. So please, please mark that on your calendar and register online if you already have not. There is a great question about visiting campus, whether you're in the Cambridge area now or you're looking to visit in the future. Please come right into our office. We love visitors. Anyone on our team in the admissions office can answer all of your questions, can direct you around campus if there's something specific that you're looking for. But please come on in, and the folks that sit up front for us are happy to answer those questions for you. It's a great time to be back on campus. All of our students are here, so it's quite a buzz. Let's see. And with that, I think we will wrap up for the morning. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We highly encourage you to stay connected to us, whether that's through the email address you see here, or again, our website is just full of incredible information. So we highly encourage you to keep diving into that. And any questions that you have throughout the process, please, make sure you're asking them. We try to be as transparent as possible throughout this process to make sure that you're putting forward the best application for your candidacy as possible, and that you really truly understand what this experience is about to make sure that it's the right fit for you. And with that, I hope everyone has a great Thursday, and we look forward to seeing you online or in person around the world soon. Thank you.